The sound of shattering glass echoed through Sophia Stevens' bedroom, followed by a shattered mirror and a shattered future. Standing in her white wedding gown, tears streaming down her face, she stared at the engagement ring in her trembling hand, the ring Harrison Prentice had just returned to her, along with words that cut deeper than the scars across her back. "I can't marry you," he'd said, his eyes unable to meet hers after she'd finally shown him the truth. Not like this. It was June 1875 in Tahlequah, Oklahoma Territory, and tomorrow was supposed to be her wedding day. Sophia collapsed onto her bed, the ivory silk of her dress billowing around her like a cloud. The dress she'd spent months saving for from her meager schoolteacher's salary. The dress she would never walk down the aisle in. The dress that now seemed to mock her with its perfection, while her own body was so terribly flawed. She thought of the faces that would greet her in town tomorrow, pitying, curious, judgmental. The whispers that would follow her into the schoolroom on Monday. The children who would inevitably learn that Miss Stevens had been rejected at the altar because of the scars that marked her from shoulder to hip, permanent reminders of the fire that had claimed her parents when she was 16. She couldn't bear it. She wouldn't. By dawn, Sophia had packed her belongings into a single trunk. She left a note for her Aunt Martha, who had raised her after the fire, apologizing for the scandal her departure would cause, but explaining she needed a fresh start somewhere no one knew her story or her scars. 2 days later, Sophia stepped off the westbound train in Silver Creek, a small cattle town in the western part of the territory. The air was dry and hot, the sun beating down mercilessly as she squinted at the dusty main street. A handful of weathered buildings lined either side a general store, a saloon, a small bank, a hotel, and what appeared to be a doctor's office. In the distance, the vast prairie stretched endlessly beneath an impossibly blue sky. Silver Creek wasn't much, but it was exactly what Sophia needed, a place where Harrison Prentice and her humiliation couldn't find her. The station master, an elderly man with a kind face, helped her with her trunk. "Miss, you planning to stay in Silver Creek?" "We don't get many single ladies passing through." "Yes," Sophia said with more conviction than she felt. "I'm hoping to find work teaching." "Well now, that's fortunate. Our last school teacher, Mrs. Holloway, passed last winter. Town's been looking for someone educated to take over." "You might want to speak with Mayor Tompkins. His office is above the bank." An hour later, Sophia had secured both a position and a small room above the general store. The town was desperate enough for a teacher that they hardly questioned her references or sudden appearance. Mayor Tompkins, a balding man with an impressive mustache, had seemed relieved when she presented her teaching credentials from back east. "School term starts in 3 weeks," he explained. "That should give you time to settle in and prepare. The schoolhouse is just at the edge of town." That evening, as Sophia unpacked her few belongings, she felt something like hope for the first time in days. Perhaps here, where no one knew about her scars or her shame, she could start anew. She would be careful, as she had been in Tahlequah. No one would ever see her bare back. No one would ever know. The next morning, Sophia rose early, determined to familiarize herself with Silver Creek before meeting any more townspeople. She dressed in her most practical outfit, a simple navy blue skirt and white blouse, her honey brown hair pulled back in a neat bun. The high collar and long sleeves would ensure her scars remained hidden, despite the summer heat. The town was already stirring as she stepped onto the wooden sidewalk. Cowboys and ranch hands moved purposefully about their business, tipping their hats politely as they passed. Women in calico dresses carried baskets or led children by the hand. She found the schoolhouse easily enough, a modest white building with a small bell tower. The door was unlocked, and inside she found a single room with rows of benches, a blackboard, and a teacher's desk. Books were stacked haphazardly on shelves, and a fine layer of dust covered everything. "It'll need some work," she murmured to herself, running a finger across the desk. "That it will, madam." Sophia startled at the deep voice behind her, spinning around to find a tall man silhouetted in the doorway. As he stepped inside, the morning light revealed a lean, muscled frame, tanned skin, and eyes as blue as the Oklahoma sky. He wore the practical clothes of a working cowboy denim pants, a faded shirt with the sleeves rolled up, revealing forearms corded with muscle, and a dust-covered hat he promptly removed. "Didn't mean to frighten you," he said, the corners of his eyes crinkling with his smile. "Name's Wyatt Langston. I work at the Double R Ranch north of town." "Sophia Stevens," she replied, automatically extending her hand before drawing it back, suddenly self-conscious. "I'm the new schoolteacher." Wyatt closed the distance between them in a few long strides, capturing her hand before she could fully withdraw it. His grip was firm but gentle, his skin rough with calluses. "Pleased to meet you, Miss Stevens. Town's been needing a proper teacher." "My sister Abigail will be one of your pupils. She's 10, smart as a whip but wild as they come." Sophia found herself smiling despite her nervousness. "I look forward to meeting her and all the children. What brings you to Silver Creek, if you don't mind my asking?" The question was innocent enough, but Sophia felt heat rise to her cheeks. "I was looking for a change of scenery." Something in her tone must have warned him not to press, because he simply nodded and changed the subject. "Well, if you're looking to get this place in shape before school starts, you'll need some help. The roof leaks over there," he pointed to a water stain in the corner, "and those windows stick something terrible. I couldn't impose, no imposition. I'm handy with tools and the ranch can spare me for a day or two. Most folks around here will pitch in if you ask. That's the way of things in Silver Creek." Before Sophia could respond, a bell jangled somewhere down the street and Wyatt turned his head toward the sound. "That'll be the general store opening. Mrs. Hawkins runs it. She'll be wanting to meet you, I expect. Most everyone will. We don't get many new faces." "Thank you, Mr. Langston, for the offer of help and the warning," Sophia said with a small smile. "Wyatt, please." "And it wasn't a warning, Miss Stevens. Folks here are good people. They just get curious sometimes." He settled his hat back on his head, tipping the brim to her. "I'll be by tomorrow with some tools if that suits you." After he left, Sophia stood in the quiet schoolroom for a long moment. There was something about Wyatt Langston that unsettled her, not in an unpleasant way, but in a manner that made her heart beat just a little faster. It had been a long time since she'd allowed herself to notice such things about a man, not since Harrison. The memory of his face when he'd seen her scars flashed through her mind, the shock, the revulsion he'd tried so hard to hide. Sophia squared her shoulders. No, she wouldn't think about that now. She had a schoolroom to prepare and a new life to begin. The next week passed in a blur of activity. True to his word, Wyatt arrived the following day with tools and lumber. He wasn't alone. He'd brought 2 other ranch hands and his sister Abigail, a freckle-faced girl with the same startling blue eyes as her brother. "Abby wanted to meet her new teacher," Wyatt explained as the girl bounced excitedly around the schoolroom. "And these fellas owed me a favor. Over the next few days, they repaired the roof, fixed the windows, built new bookshelves, and even constructed a proper coat rack by the door." Sophia worked alongside them, organizing books and cleaning years of grime from every surface. During those days, she learned more about Wyatt. How he'd come west with his parents as a boy, how they'd died of fever when he was 18, leaving him to raise Abigail alone. How he'd worked his way up from ranch hand to foreman at the Double R, owners getting on in years, Wyatt told her as they ate lunch in the shade of an oak tree outside the schoolhouse. "No children of his own, says he might sell me the place one day if I can ever save enough for a down payment." "That's a wonderful opportunity," Sophia said, genuinely impressed by his ambition. "It's a dream," he admitted. "But a man's gotta have those, doesn't he?" She nodded, thinking of her own dreams once so simple. A husband, children, a life filled with love and normalcy. Dreams that had shattered when Harrison had seen her scars and walked away. "What about you, Miss Stevens? What brought you all the way out to our little town? You don't seem the type to choose the frontier life willingly." Sophia tensed, considering how much to share. "I was engaged," she finally said, her voice soft. "It didn't work out." Wyatt studied her face, and she had the unsettling feeling he could see right through her careful composure. "His loss," he said simply, and the unexpected kindness in his voice nearly undid her. By the time school was set to begin, Sophia had met most of Silver Creek's residents. Mrs. Hawkins from the general store had taken a particular interest in her, inviting her to Sunday dinner and introducing her around town. The local women's group had welcomed her warmly, if a bit curiously. "You'll need to find yourself a husband out here," Mrs. Peterson, the banker's wife, had said bluntly during one gathering. "Pretty young thing like you won't last long on the shelf." Sophia had smiled politely and changed the subject, ignoring the familiar ache in her chest. A husband was something she'd stopped hoping for the moment Harrison had returned her ring. The first day of school arrived with 26 pupils ranging from 6 to 16 years old. Sophia stood before them in her best teaching dress, heart pounding with nervous excitement. "Good morning," she began. "I'm Miss Stevens, and I'm delighted to be your new teacher." The morning went well enough, though she quickly identified her challenges: two teenage boys more interested in ranch work than education, a cluster of giggling girls, and young Billy Thompson, who couldn't seem to sit still for more than a minute at a time. Abigail Langston proved as bright as her brother had claimed, answering questions eagerly and helping the younger children. By noon, when Sophia rang the bell for lunch, she felt cautiously optimistic about her new position. She was standing on the schoolhouse steps, watching the children eat from their lunch pails in the yard, when she spotted Wyatt approaching on horseback. He dismounted gracefully, tying his horse to the hitching post before striding toward her. "Miss Stevens," he greeted her with a tip of his hat. "Thought I'd check how your first day is going." "Quite well, thank you," she replied, suddenly aware of several students watching with interest. "Your sister is a tremendous help." Wyatt grinned, pride evident in his expression. "Abby's the smart one in the family. I just wanted to make sure these young hooligans were treating you with respect." He raised his voice slightly, directing it toward the older boys, who straightened immediately. "Isn't that right, boys?" "Yes, Mr. Langston," they chorused. Sophia bit back a smile. "They've been perfect gentlemen." "Glad to hear it." He lowered his voice. "Listen, there's a social Saturday evening at the church. Dancing, food, the usual. I was wondering if you might allow me to escort you." The invitation caught her completely off guard. She hadn't considered that anyone in Silver Creek might develop an interest in her beyond professional courtesy. I don't dance, Mr. Langston," she stammered. "Then we won't dance," he replied easily. "But you should come anyway. Good way to meet more folks." She hesitated, torn between caution and a growing desire to truly belong in Silver Creek. "Thank you, that would be nice." His smile brightened his entire face. "I'll call for you at 6 then." As he rode away, Sophia felt a mixture of anticipation and dread. A social meant more people, more questions, more chances for someone to discover her secret. But the way Wyatt had looked at her like she was something precious made her heart flutter traitorously. That Saturday evening, Sophia stood before the small mirror in her room, critically examining her appearance. She'd chosen her best dress, a forest green taffeta with modest lace trim at the collar and wrists. Her hair was arranged in a becoming updo with a few soft curls framing her face. The dress was beautiful, but most importantly, it covered her completely from neck to wrist to ankle. No one would see the scars that twisted across her back and side, the permanent reminder of the night she'd escaped the burning house, but not before the flames had claimed a piece of her. A knock at her door announced Wyatt's arrival. When she opened it, she found him standing there in clean, pressed clothes, his usually unruly hair combed neatly. He held a small bouquet of wildflowers. "You look beautiful," he said, and the sincerity in his voice made her blush. "Thank you." "You clean up rather well yourself, Mr. Langston," he grinned, handing her the flowers. "Thought you might like these, and I thought we'd agreed on Wyatt." The church social was already in full swing when they arrived. Lanterns hung from trees, casting a warm glow over the gathering. Tables laden with food lined one side of the churchyard, while a small group of musicians played lively tunes. Couples twirled across a wooden platform that had been laid down as a dance floor. Sophia felt eyes on her as Wyatt led her into the crowd, his hand a steady presence at the small of her back. She was introduced to dozens of people, names and faces blending together until she felt slightly dizzy from it all. "Would you like something to drink?" Wyatt asked, noticing her discomfort. "Yes, please." While he was gone, Mrs. Peterson cornered her. "So you and the Langston boy, she said with a knowing smile. "I told the ladies you wouldn't be single long. He's a good catch, owns his own land now, you know." "Old man Rutherford sold him a piece of the double R last month." "We're just friends," Sophia protested, though the words felt hollow even to her own ears. "Of course, dear," Mrs. Peterson patted her arm, "though I must say you'd make beautiful children together." Sophia was saved from responding by Wyatt's return. He handed her a cup of punch and gave Mrs. Peterson a respectful nod. "Evening, madam. Mind if I steal Miss Stevens away? I promise to introduce her to the Reverend." As he guided her through the crowd, Sophia couldn't help but laugh softly. "Thank you for the rescue. Saw your expression from across the yard. Mrs. Peterson can be enthusiastic about matchmaking. So I gathered." The evening progressed pleasantly. True to his word, Wyatt didn't pressure her to dance, though she could tell he wanted to. Instead, they sat at a table near the edge of the gathering, talking and watching others enjoy the festivities. "Tell me about your home," Wyatt said as they shared a piece of apple pie. "Where you came from, I mean." Sophia tensed slightly but decided a partial truth was better than an outright lie. "I grew up near Tahlequah with my parents. After they died, I lived with my aunt and taught school there." "I'm sorry about your parents," he said, his eyes soft with understanding. "Losing mine was the hardest thing I've ever faced, still is some days." "Yes," she agreed quietly, "it changes you." They sat in companionable silence for a moment, united by shared grief. Then Wyatt surprised her by taking her hand. "Would you walk with me? It's getting a bit crowded here." They strolled away from the church, following a path that led to a small stream on the edge of town. The night was warm, stars splashed across the sky like diamonds on black velvet. The sounds of the social faded behind them, replaced by the gentle gurgle of water and the chirping of crickets. "I hope you're finding Silver Creek to your liking," Wyatt said as they paused by the stream. "I am. Everyone has been very kind." "And the children, they're behaving themselves," Sophia smiled. "Mostly. Young Billy Thompson is a challenge, but we're finding our way. Good." Wyatt seemed to hesitate, then turned to face her fully. "Miss Stevens, Sophia, I know you haven't been here long, but I find myself thinking about you more than is probably proper." Her heart began to race. "Mr. Langston, Wyatt," he corrected gently. "Wyatt," she conceded. "I'm flattered, truly, but there are things about me you don't know." "I'd like the chance to learn them." She shook her head, stepping back slightly. "Some things are better left unknown." He studied her face in the moonlight, his expression serious. "I don't believe that, not about you." Before she could respond, voices approached on the path behind them. Wyatt sighed, clearly frustrated by the interruption. "We should head back," Sophia said, grateful for the reprieve. He nodded, offering his arm. "This conversation isn't over," he warned, though his tone was light. "Just postponed." Over the next few weeks, Sophia fell into a comfortable routine. Her days were filled with teaching, and she found genuine fulfillment in watching her students learn and grow. Evenings were spent preparing lessons or attending various community functions where she was increasingly accepted as one of Silver Creek's own. And then there was Wyatt. He made no secret of his interest, calling at her lodgings regularly, bringing small gifts, a book of poetry, fresh flowers, honey from a farmer's hive outside town. He attended church services with her on Sundays and often appeared at the schoolhouse at day's end to walk her home. Despite her best efforts to keep him at arm's length, Sophia found herself drawn to him. His easy laugh, his kindness to his sister and the town's children, the quiet confidence with which he moved through the world, all of it appealed to her in ways she'd never expected. But always, there were the scars. The secret she kept hidden beneath high collars and long sleeves, even as summer's heat made such clothing nearly unbearable. One particularly hot afternoon in late August, Sophia dismissed her students early. The schoolroom had become stifling, and even the most diligent pupils had grown listless in the oppressive heat. After the children had gone, she stood at the open window, fanning herself with a book and longing for relief. The creek where she'd walked with Wyatt that night of the social was only a short distance away. Perhaps a quick splash of cool water on her face and wrists would help. She locked the schoolhouse and hurried down the path, glancing around to ensure no one was watching. The creek ran through a small wooded area that offered privacy from the main road. When she reached it, Sophia knelt on the grassy bank and dipped her handkerchief into the water, pressing it to her flushed cheeks and neck. The relief was immediate but temporary. After a moment's hesitation, she removed her shoes and stockings and lifted her skirts just enough to dangle her feet in the cool water. She sighed with pleasure as the heat began to ebb from her body. Lost in the blissful sensation, she didn't hear the approach of footsteps until a twig snapped nearby. She whirled around, yanking her feet from the water to find Wyatt standing a few yards away, looking as startled as she felt. "I'm sorry," he said quickly, averting his gaze. "I didn't mean to intrude. I was riding back to the ranch and thought I heard it doesn't matter. I'll leave you in peace." "No, I'm the one who should apologize," Sophia said, hurriedly pulling on her stockings. "This was terribly improper of me." Wyatt's lips quirked in a small smile. "It's nearly 100 degrees today. I'd say dipping your feet in the creek is the most sensible thing anyone's done." His easy acceptance calmed her embarrassment somewhat. She finished with her shoes and stood, brushing leaves from her skirt. "Nevertheless, I should be getting back." "Allow me to walk with you," he asked, offering his arm. They strolled slowly toward town, the heat making any pace more strenuous than a leisurely amble uncomfortable. Conversation flowed easily between them, as it always did. "The Harvest Festival is coming up next month," Wyatt mentioned as they approached the general store where Sophia lodged. "First big event of the fall. Everyone brings food, there's games for the children, dancing." "It sounds lovely," Sophia said, though the mention of dancing made her tense slightly. Wyatt noticed as he seemed to notice everything about her. "You really don't dance at all? Is it a religious objection or—" "No, nothing like that. I simply prefer not to." He studied her for a long moment, then nodded. "Well, there's plenty else to enjoy at the festival. I'd still be honored if you'd attend with me." Before she could answer, Mrs. Hawkins burst from the store, face alight with excitement. "Miss Stevens, Mr. Langston, have you heard the news?" "What news, Mrs. Hawkins?" Sophia asked. "The railroad's coming. Mayor Tompkins just got word. They're extending the line right through Silver Creek. Construction begins next spring." Wyatt whistled low. "That'll change things around here, for the better," Mrs. Hawkins declared. "Think of the business it'll bring. And Silver Creek will finally be on the map." As Mrs. Hawkins continued extolling the virtues of railroad access, Sophia found herself wondering how this development might affect her new life. More people meant more chances for someone to discover her secret. Or worse, for someone from Tahlequah to pass through and recognize her. That evening, as she prepared for bed, a knock at her door startled her. She quickly buttoned her nightgown to the throat and pulled on her robe before answering. Mrs. Hawkins stood there holding a telegram. "This just came for you, dear. Express from Tahlequah." Sophia's heart stuttered. No one in Tahlequah knew where she'd gone except her Aunt Martha, and Martha wouldn't have contacted her unless it was an emergency. "Thank you," she managed, taking the telegram with trembling hands. Alone again, she broke the seal and read the brief message. "Sophia, stop Harrison Prentice looking for you. Stop. Says he made terrible mistakes. Stop claims he loves you despite all. Stop coming to find you. Stop Martha." The paper slipped from her fingers to the floor. Harrison was looking for her. After what he'd done, what he'd said, she sank onto her bed, emotions warring within her. For so long, she'd dreamed of Harrison coming back, saying he'd been wrong, that he could love her despite her scars. Now that he apparently had, she felt only dread and a strange emptiness where love should have been. Because when she closed her eyes and thought of a face, it wasn't Harrison's that appeared. It was Wyatt's kind eyes crinkling at the corners when he smiled, strong hands gentle when helping her down from a carriage, voice warm with sincerity when he spoke to her. But Wyatt didn't know about her scars, and if he ever saw them, would his reaction be any different from Harrison's? Could anyone truly see past such disfigurement to love the woman beneath? Sophia slept poorly that night, and the next day's teaching suffered for it. She was distracted, making errors in simple arithmetic and losing her place while reading aloud. The children exchanged puzzled glances, unaccustomed to seeing their normally composed teacher so flustered. After school, Wyatt appeared as he often did, ready to walk her home. One look at her face and his expression shifted from pleasant to concerned. "What's wrong?" he asked as soon as they were away from the schoolhouse. She considered deflecting but found she didn't have the energy for pretense. "I received a telegram yesterday from my aunt. Bad news, complicated news." She hesitated, then decided on a partial truth. "The man I was engaged to before coming here is looking for me. He wants to reconcile." Wyatt's step faltered slightly, but his voice remained steady. "I see, and do you want to reconcile with him?" "No," Sophia said, surprising herself with the vehemence of her response. "No, I don't." Relief flashed across Wyatt's features before he schooled his expression. "May I ask what happened between you? Why the engagement ended?" This was dangerous territory, but Sophia found herself wanting to explain at least as much as she could without revealing everything. "He discovered something about me," she said carefully. "Something that changed how he saw me. He decided he couldn't marry me after all." Wyatt's jaw tightened. "Sounds like a fool to me." "You don't know what he discovered," Sophia said quietly. "Doesn't matter," Wyatt replied with absolute conviction. "Nothing could justify hurting you that way." His certainty was both touching and painful. If only he knew the truth. They walked in silence for a moment before Wyatt spoke again. "Will you tell him not to come? In a telegram, I mean." Sophia shook her head. "I don't know where he is. He's already searching for me. And if he finds you, I'll send him away," she said firmly. Then, softer, "But I'm afraid of the gossip his appearance might cause. I've built a life here, Wyatt. I don't want it tainted by scandal." He reached for her hand, squeezing it gently. "Silver Creek isn't like other places. Folks here judge a person by their actions, not their past. Whatever happens, you won't face it alone." His words warmed her, but the fear remained. If Harrison found her, the truth about her scars might spread through town like wildfire. And then what would become of the respect she'd earned? Of Wyatt's feelings for her? September arrived with no sign of Harrison, and Sophia began to hope that perhaps he'd given up his search or been directed elsewhere. The harvest festival approached, and despite her lingering anxiety, she found herself looking forward to it. The night before the festival, Sophia was helping Mrs. Hawkins close up the general store when the older woman broached a subject Sophia had been dreading. "So, you and Wyatt Langston," Mrs. Hawkins said with a knowing smile. "He's sweet on you, anyone can see that." Sophia busied herself rearranging a display of ribbons. "We're friends, MMHMM. Friends, that boy rides into town near every day just to walk you home from school, brings you flowers and books and who knows what else. If that's friendship, I've been doing it wrong my whole life." "Mrs. Hawkins, I'm not prying, dear, not really. But folks are talking, and I thought you should know. Nothing scandalous," she hastened to add, "just wondering when he'll make his intentions official." Sophia's hands stilled. "His intentions?" "Well, marriage, of course. What else would a respectable man like Wyatt Langston be courting you for?" Marriage, the word hit Sophia like a physical blow. Of course that's where things would naturally progress if she continued to encourage Wyatt's attentions. And hadn't she been doing just that, despite knowing it could never work? "I don't think that is. We haven't discussed Mrs. Hawkins patted her arm. "Don't fret, child. Anyone with eyes can see he's head over heels for you, and you could do a lot worse than Wyatt Langston. Good man, good provider, kind heart. The way he raised that sister of his after their parents passed speaks volumes about his character." Later, alone in her room, Sophia faced the truth she'd been avoiding. She was falling in love with Wyatt, perhaps had already fallen. But love required honesty, and honesty meant revealing her scars, both the physical ones and those Harrison had left on her heart. Could she risk it? Could she bear to see revulsion in Wyatt's eyes, as she had in Harrison's? The harvest festival dawned clear and crisp, the first real break from summer's heat. Sophia dressed with extra care in a russet-colored dress that complemented her brown hair and brought out amber highlights in her hazel eyes. Wyatt arrived promptly at noon, looking handsome in clean clothes, his hat held respectfully in his hands. "You look beautiful," he said simply. "Thank you," she replied, fighting a blush. "You look quite handsome yourself." The festival was being held in a large meadow just outside town. Tables groaned under the weight of food brought by every household. Children ran laughing through a makeshift maze of hay bales. Men competed in horseshoe tournaments and tests of strength. while women judged preserves and quilts. As the afternoon progressed, Sophia found herself genuinely enjoying the festivities. She cheered as Wyatt won the horseshoe tournament, laughed as Abigail proudly showed off the blue ribbon she'd won for her needlework, and sampled more delicious food than she could possibly eat. As dusk fell, lanterns were lit around the perimeter of the meadow, and the local musicians struck up a lively tune. Couples began gathering for dancing. "Would you like to sit and watch the dancing?" Wyatt asked, carefully respecting her previous statement about not dancing herself. "Actually," Sophia said, surprising herself, "I think I would like to dance, just once." Wyatt's eyebrows rose. "Are you sure?" No, she wasn't sure at all. Dancing meant being held, meant physical contact that might reveal the uneven texture of her scarred skin through her clothing. But suddenly, she wanted this normal experience, wanted to be in Wyatt's arms, even if just for the span of a song. "I'm sure," she said, taking his offered hand. He led her to the edge of the dancing area, positioning one hand respectfully at her waist, the other holding hers. The music was a simple waltz, and Wyatt moved with unexpected grace for a man who spent his days on horseback. "You dance well," Sophia remarked, relaxing slightly as they moved in harmony. "My mother insisted I learn, said a gentleman should know how to dance properly." His smile turned wistful. "She'd be pleased to see me putting those lessons to use with such a lovely partner." As they twirled among the other couples, Sophia felt a moment of perfect contentment. Here, in Wyatt's arms, with the stars emerging above and music swirling around them, she could almost believe in happy endings. The moment shattered as a commotion erupted at the edge of the meadow. Heads turned as a well-dressed stranger on horseback cantered into the festival grounds, looking around frantically. "I'm looking for Sophia Stevens," the man called out, his voice cutting through the music. "Is she here?" Sophia froze in Wyatt's arms, her face draining of color. "Harrison." Wyatt felt her stiffen and followed her gaze to the newcomer. Understanding dawned in his eyes. "Your former fiancé?" he asked quietly. She nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. "Do you want to speak with him?" She hesitated. Part of her wanted to flee, to hide, but another part recognized that running would only postpone the inevitable. Better to face Harrison now on her terms with Wyatt beside her. "Yes," she finally said, "but would you stay with me?" Wyatt's expression hardened as he looked at Harrison. "Wild horses couldn't drag me away." They approached Harrison together. He had dismounted and was questioning Mayor Tompkins, who looked thoroughly confused by the stranger's intensity. "Harrison," Sophia called, her voice steadier than she felt. He whirled around, and for a moment, raw emotion flashed across his handsome features: relief, joy, and something that might have been regret. "Sophia," he breathed. "Thank God I found you. I've been searching for months." "Why?" The question came out more sharply than she'd intended. Harrison seemed taken aback by her tone. His eyes flicked to Wyatt, standing protectively at her side, then back to her. "Could we speak privately, please?" Wyatt tensed beside her, but Sophia placed a calming hand on his arm. "It's all right," she told him. "I'll be fine." Reluctantly, Wyatt stepped back, though he remained within sight as Sophia led Harrison to a quiet spot at the edge of the festival grounds. "You look well," Harrison said once they were alone. "Beautiful as always." "What do you want, Harrison?" Sophia asked, crossing her arms defensively. "I want you back," he said simply. "I made a terrible mistake, Sophia. The way I reacted when you showed me your back. It was unforgivable. I was shocked and I handled it badly, but I've regretted it every day since." "You rejected me," she said, the pain of that moment still fresh. "You saw my scars and decided I wasn't worth marrying after all." Harrison flinched. "I know, I'm so sorry, Sophia. I was a coward and a fool, but I've changed. I've had months to think about what's truly important, and it's you. I love you, I want to marry you, scars and all." Once, those were the words she dreamed of hearing. Now they rang hollow, too little too late. "No," she said quietly. Harrison blinked, clearly not expecting that response. "No, but Sophia, I've come all this way. I've been searching for months." "I love you. If you truly loved me, you wouldn't have left in the first place. Love doesn't recoil from imperfection, Harrison." "I know that now," he insisted. "Please give me another chance. Come back to Tahlequah with me. We can start over." Sophia shook her head. "I have a life here now." Students who depend on me, friends who value me, I won't give that up. Is it him? Harrison demanded, gesturing toward Wyatt, who stood watching them from a distance. That cowboy, have you developed feelings for him? That's none of your concern, Sophia replied evenly. Harrison's expression hardened. Does he know about your scars? Have you shown him what you look like beneath those prim dresses? The cruelty of the question stole her breath. No, she admitted after a moment. He doesn't know, and when he finds out. Do you think he'll react any differently than I did? The doubt that had plagued her for weeks rose up, threatening to choke her. What if Harrison was right? What if Wyatt's reaction would be the same or worse? I don't know, she said honestly, but that's for me to find out, not you. Harrison stepped closer, his voice dropping to a persuasive murmur. Sophia, I know you. I understand what you've been through. This cowboy, he's a stranger. Come home with me. I promise I'll never hurt you again. For a heartbeat, uncertainty gripped her. Then she thought of Wyatt's steady presence, his unwavering support, the way he looked at her like she was the most precious thing in the world, all without knowing her darkest secret. No, Harrison, it's over. It was over the moment you handed back my ring. His face flushed with anger. He won't want you either once he knows. No man wants damaged goods. The words hit their mark with painful accuracy, but Sophia refused to show it. I think you should leave now. Fine, Harrison spat. But don't come crying back to me when your cowboy sees those hideous scars and runs for the hills. He stormed back to his horse, mounted, and rode away without another word to anyone. Sophia stood rooted to the spot, trembling with emotion, anger, hurt, and a terrible fear that Harrison might be right. She felt rather than heard Wyatt approach, his footsteps soft on the grass behind her. Are you all right? He asked gently. No, she admitted, not turning to face him. But I will be. What did he want? Me. He wanted me to go back with him, to marry him. Wyatt was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was carefully controlled. And what do you want, Sophia? She turned to him then, searching his face in the dim lantern light. I want to stay here, in Silver Creek. Relief flooded his features, followed quickly by determination. Sophia, there's something I need to say. I've been trying to find the right moment, but after tonight, I don't want to wait any longer. Her heart began to race. Wyatt, please, let me finish. From the moment I met you in that dusty schoolhouse, I knew you were special. These past months, getting to know you, seeing your kindness, your strength, your gentle way with the children, I've fallen in love with you, Sophia Stevens. The words she'd both longed for and dreaded hung in the air between them. Wyatt, there's something you don't know about me, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Something important. Whatever it is, it doesn't matter, he insisted. I love you, all of you. She shook her head, tears gathering in her eyes. You can't say that, not until you know, understanding dawned in his eyes. Is this what he meant? What ended your engagement? Sophia nodded, unable to speak past the tightness in her throat. Tell me, Wyatt said softly, taking her hands in his. She took a deep, shuddering breath. When I was 16, our house caught fire in the middle of the night. My father got me out, then went back for my mother. Neither of them made it. The familiar pain of that night washed over her, never fully dulled by time. I tried to go back in too to help them. The back of my dress caught fire. A neighbor pulled me away, rolled me on the ground to put out the flames, but you were burned, Wyatt finished for her, his grip on her hands tightening slightly. Yes, badly. From my right shoulder down my back to my hip. The scars, they're not pretty, Wyatt. They're twisted and red and ugly. Harrison saw them the night before our wedding end. She couldn't finish, but she didn't need to. The rest was obvious. Wyatt's expression darkened with anger. So he left you. Because of scars you got trying to save your parents, he said he couldn't, that I wasn't. She couldn't repeat Harrison's cruel words. Look at me, Wyatt said, his voice gentle but firm. When she raised her eyes to his, he continued, scars are just evidence that you survived something meant to kill you. They don't make you less beautiful, Sophia. They make you stronger. The words, so unexpected, so different from Harrison's reaction, broke something open inside her. Tears spilled down her cheeks. You can't know that, she whispered. You haven't seen them. I don't need to, Wyatt insisted. But if it matters to you, I'm not afraid to look. Whenever you're ready to show me, I'll be here, and my feelings won't change. She searched his face for any sign of insincerity but found only honest emotion. How can you be so sure? A sad smile touched his lips. Because I have scars too, Sophia. Not like yours, maybe, but here, he touched his chest over his heart. Losing my parents, raising Abby alone, watching friends die in the war life leaves marks on all of us. Some you can see, some you can't, but they're part of our stories. They make us who we are. In that moment, standing beneath the stars with Wyatt's words wrapping around her like a blanket, Sophia felt something she hadn't felt in years. Hope. Not the cautious optimism she'd cultivated since coming to Silver Creek, but real, profound hope that maybe, just maybe, she could be loved fully, scars and all. "I love you too," she whispered, the words she'd been holding back for weeks finally breaking free. "I'm still afraid, but I love you." Wyatt's smile was like sunrise after the longest night. Slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wanted, he leaned down and pressed his lips to hers in a kiss so gentle, so full of reverence that fresh tears sprang to her eyes. When they parted, he rested his forehead against hers. "We'll go as slowly as you need, Sophia. I'm not going anywhere." They returned to the festival hand in hand, both aware that curious eyes were following them, wondering about the stranger who had disrupted the evening and then departed so abruptly. But for once, Sophia didn't mind the attention. Let them look, let them wonder. She had nothing to hide, at least, not from the man beside her. The following Sunday, after church services, Wyatt invited Sophia to dinner at his homestead. "Nothing fancy," he assured her. "Just a chance for you to see where Abby and I live." "She's been begging me to bring you out." Sophia accepted, both excited and nervous. This felt like a significant step, seeing Wyatt's home, spending time with him away from the watchful eyes of the town. The Langston homestead was modest but well-maintained. A sturdy cabin stood in a clearing with a barn and corral nearby. A small garden thrived to one side and chickens pecked contentedly in the yard. "It's not much," Wyatt said as he helped her down from the wagon. "But it's ours." "It's lovely," she replied sincerely. "You've made a real home here." Abigail burst from the cabin, her face alight with excitement. "Miss Stevens, you came. I made apple dumplings for dessert all by myself, did you? I can't wait to try them." The afternoon passed pleasantly. After a simple but delicious meal, Abigail insisted on showing Sophia every corner of their home, from the loft where she slept to the collection of books Wyatt had acquired over the years for her education. "Wyatt reads to me every night," Abigail confided. "Even when he's tired from working all day, he's the best brother in the world." Sophia glanced at Wyatt, who looked embarrassed by his sister's praise. "I believe he is," she agreed softly. Later, while Abigail was occupied with feeding the chickens, Wyatt took Sophia for a walk around his property. They stopped at the crest of a small hill that overlooked the cabin and the rolling prairie beyond. "I have dreams for this place," Wyatt admitted, his eyes scanning the horizon. "More cattle, maybe horses too, a bigger house someday." He turned to her, his expression serious. "Dreams that include you if you'll have me." Sophia's heart swelled with emotion. "Wyatt, I'm not asking yet," he said quickly. "Not officially, I know it's too soon and you need time. I just wanted you to know where my heart lies." She reached for his hand, twining her fingers with his. "Thank you for understanding, for being patient." As September gave way to October, their courtship continued in earnest. Wyatt called on Sophia regularly, taking her for drives in his wagon or walks by the creek. They shared meals, stories, dreams, and kisses that grew increasingly difficult to keep chaste as their feelings deepened. But always, Sophia maintained the physical barrier between them. Her dresses remained high-necked and long-sleeved, her composure intact whenever Wyatt's hands strayed anywhere near her back. One crisp afternoon in late October, they were walking along the creek when Wyatt broached the subject directly. "Sophia, may I ask you something personal?" She tensed slightly but nodded. "Of course. The scars on your back, do they cause you physical pain?" The question was unexpected. "Sometimes," she admitted. "When the weather changes sharply, or if I've been sitting in one position too long, the skin is tight, doesn't stretch properly." Wyatt nodded thoughtfully. "I've been reading about burn injuries. Dr. Miller had some medical journals in his office." "You've been researching burns?" Sophia asked, touched by his dedication. "I wanted to understand better, what you've been through, what you might still be going through." He hesitated, then added, There are treatments, mentioned oils, stretching exercises that might help with the discomfort. Tears pricked at her eyes. Harrison had never once considered the physical pain her scars might cause her. His concern had been entirely for how they affected her appearance, how they might reflect on him as her husband. "Thank you," she whispered. "That means more than I can say." Wyatt squeezed her hand. "Sophia, I want to ask something else, and please know you can say no. Would you consider showing me your scars, not out of curiosity, but because I want to know all of you? And because I think maybe carrying this secret has become a burden heavier than the scars themselves." Her first instinct was to refuse, to protect herself from potential rejection. But looking into Wyatt's earnest face, she found herself reconsidering. "I'm afraid," she admitted. "I know, but I'm not Harrison Prentice, and you're not alone anymore." Sophia took a deep breath. "All right, but not here, not outdoors. Of course, whenever and wherever you feel comfortable." The opportunity came the following evening. Mrs. Hawkins had gone to visit her sister in the next town, leaving Sophia with the store to mind and privacy in her rooms above. Wyatt called after supper, as was becoming his custom. They sat in the small parlor adjoining Sophia's bedroom, talking about their days. A fire crackled in the hearth, warding off the autumn chill. As a lull fell in the conversation, Sophia gathered her courage. "Wyatt, if you still want to, that is, I think I'm ready to show you my back." He studied her face carefully. "Are you certain? There's no rush." "I'm certain. I need to know. I need to see your reaction for myself." Wyatt nodded, his expression solemn. "Whatever happens, remember that I love you. That won't change." Sophia rose and walked to her bedroom door, pausing with her hand on the knob. "I'll need a moment. Wait here, as long as you need." In her bedroom, Sophia moved with deliberate calm. She lit the lamps, then stood before her mirror, steadying her breathing. Slowly, she unfastened the buttons of her blouse, hands trembling slightly. She removed it, then the chemise beneath, leaving her in just her corset and skirt, her back reflected in the mirror, the stark evidence of that terrible night visible even in the soft lamplight. The scars began at her right shoulder, spreading across her back in a web of ridged, discolored tissue. Some areas were angry red, others a silvery white. The worst of it covered her right side down to her hip. She stared at the reflection, trying to see herself through Wyatt's eyes. Would he be repulsed? Would his face show the same disgust Harrison's had? Only one way to find out. She pulled a shawl around her shoulders, holding it closed in front. "You can come in now," she called, her voice barely audible. The door opened slowly. Wyatt entered, his expression a mixture of concern and tenderness. He closed the door behind him, then stood waiting, giving her space to change her mind if she wanted. "Are you sure?" he asked again. Sophia nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. Then, gathering every ounce of courage she possessed, she turned her back to him and let the shawl fall. The silence that followed seemed to stretch for eternity. She couldn't see his face, couldn't gauge his reaction. Her shoulders began to hunch forward involuntarily, a protective gesture. "Sophia," Wyatt's voice was rough with emotion. "May I come closer?" She nodded, still not turning. His footsteps were soft on the wooden floor as he approached. Then, gently, so gently she barely felt it, his fingertips touched her shoulder, tracing the edge of a scar. "Do I hurt you?" He asked softly. "No," she whispered. His touch continued, feather light, mapping the landscape of her damaged skin. There was no revulsion in his touch, no hesitation. "You're so brave," he murmured. "So incredibly brave," that broke her. A sob escaped her throat, and suddenly Wyatt was turning her, pulling her into his arms, holding her against his chest as she cried. "I've got you," he whispered into her hair. "I've got you, and I'm not letting go." When her tears finally subsided, Sophia pulled back just enough to see his face. What she found there wasn't pity or disgust, but admiration and love, so much love it took her breath away. "They're part of you," Wyatt said simply, "and I love every part of you, Sophia Stevens." He bent his head and kissed her, a kiss that spoke of acceptance and desire and a future she'd stopped believing was possible. When they finally parted, both breathless, Wyatt rested his forehead against hers. "Marry me," he said softly. "Be my wife, my partner, the mother of my children. Grow old with me." This time there was no hesitation in her answer. Yes, yes to all of it. They were married on a perfect day in early December with all of Silver Creek in attendance. Sophia wore a cream-colored dress with lace at the throat and wrists, her hair adorned with winter berries and evergreen sprigs. As Wyatt waited for her at the altar of the small church, his face alight with joy, Sophia felt the final pieces of her broken heart mend themselves back together. This was what love looked like, not perfect, not without scars, but stronger because of them. When the Reverend pronounced them man and wife, Wyatt kissed her with such tenderness that several ladies in the congregation dabbed at their eyes. Abigail bounced excitedly beside them, already calling Sophia sister and planning all the things they would do together as a family. The reception was held in the town hall, decorated with pine boughs and ribbons for the occasion. As Sophia and Wyatt moved among their guests, accepting congratulations and well wishes, Mrs. Peterson approached with a knowing smile. "Didn't I tell you you'd make a beautiful bride, and with the handsomest groom in the territory, no less?" Sophia laughed, happiness bubbling up inside her. "You did indeed, Mrs. Peterson. As usual, you were right." Later, as they danced their first dance as husband and wife, Wyatt held her close, his breath warm against her ear. "Happy, Mrs. Langston? More than I ever thought possible," she replied honestly. That night, in the privacy of their bedroom in the cabin Wyatt had expanded over the autumn months, Sophia gave herself fully to her husband. His hands and lips caressed every inch of her, scars and all, with equal devotion, until she understood in her very bones that he truly loved her, all of her. Afterward, lying in his arms, she traced the planes of his face in the dim firelight. "I never thought I'd find this," she admitted. "After Harrison, I believed no man would ever want me once he knew about my scars." Wyatt caught her hand, pressing a kiss to her palm. "Harrison was a fool who couldn't recognize true beauty when it was right in front of him. His loss, my gain." Years passed, and Silver Creek grew from a small cattle town to a thriving community as the railroad arrived, bringing new settlers and opportunities. Sophia continued teaching until the birth of their first child, a son they named James after Wyatt's father. 2 years later, a daughter, Elizabeth, joined the family, followed by another son, Thomas. 3 years after that, their homestead expanded as well. Wyatt's diligent work and smart investments allowed them to purchase adjoining land, until the Langston Ranch became one of the most prosperous in the territory. The cabin gave way to a proper house with plenty of room for their growing family. Through it all, Sophia's scars remained a permanent reminder of all she had survived. But as the years passed, they faded in importance, becoming just another part of her story, like the laugh lines that appeared around her eyes or the silver strands that eventually threaded through her brown hair. On their 20th anniversary, as they sat on the porch of their home watching their children play in the yard, Wyatt took her hand, his thumb rubbing over the simple gold band he'd placed there 2 decades earlier. "Do you ever think about it?" he asked quietly. "What might have happened if Harrison hadn't rejected you that day?" Sophia considered the question seriously. "Sometimes," she admitted. "But then I remember that if he hadn't, I never would have come to Silver Creek, never would have met you, never would have had our children. And I can't imagine a life without any of that." Wyatt smiled, the same smile that still made her heart skip a beat after all these years. "When I think about how close I came to never knowing you, it terrifies me. We found each other," Sophia said simply. "That's what matters." As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson, their eldest son approached, a serious expression on his face that reminded Sophia so much of Wyatt at that age. "Pa, I've been thinking about what you said about going to college back east." Wyatt straightened, giving his son his full attention. "And I want to go. I want to study law like we discussed, but I'll come back. This is home." Pride swelled in Sophia's chest. Their children were growing up with opportunities she and Wyatt had never had: education, travel, choices. Yet they remained grounded, connected to their roots. Later that night, as she prepared for bed, Sophia caught sight of her back in the mirror. The scars had faded somewhat over the years, but they were still clearly visible, a permanent part of her. She no longer minded them. They had brought her to this life, after all. Wyatt entered the room, catching her gaze in the mirror. After 20 years, he still looked at her with the same admiration and desire he had on their wedding night. "You're beautiful," he said, coming to stand behind her, his hands gently caressing her shoulders. Sophia leaned back against him, covering his hands with hers. "I love you, Wyatt Langston. And I love you, Sophia Langston, scars and all." As they lay together in the darkness, Sophia reflected on the journey that had brought her here from the terrified girl who had fled Tahlequah in shame to the woman she was now. Loved, respected, complete. Her scars had not defined her life after all. They had merely pointed her toward it, toward him, toward home. Sometimes, she thought sleepily as Wyatt's breathing deepened beside her, the deepest wounds led to the greatest healing. And sometimes, what seemed like an ending was actually the beginning of something far more beautiful than she could have ever imagined.